Hello, welcome back. As always, it's a pleasure to have you joining us here. So let's take a few minutes today and talk about time. Why don't we? And while we're at it, let's talk about space and the ego and truth and illusion and God and who and what and where you really are. I mean, really. What else? What else is there? A non-dual answer, nothing else. So, what about this idea that we refer to as time? As you see here in the title, it has no meaning. By the way, this is from the text of A Course in Miracles. It's part of this self-study curriculum. Time has no meaning. Chapter 11, Section 1, Paragraph 4. This is the section of the text that we're covering today. We don't really know, do we, what time actually is. We grow up, wherever it is in the world that you've grown up, with the indoctrination. I mean, let's be perfectly honest, with the conditioning of our parents, of our societies, perhaps that included a religious tradition or two, or a spiritual tradition, or perhaps not, but we all went to school. We've all consumed mass quantities of advertising and things like that. We're all here conditioned to think that this world is our home, that we are a physical body that we refer to as a human being, and that that's our home. And that this spinning ball of rock hurtling through this thing called space is our home. We're conditioned to believe all of this. And as we act accordingly, we experience all of the drama. And you're free to insert another word for drama. It's abbreviated BS here in the world. All of the stuff that we put ourselves through, where when we're really honest and we give ourselves a moment, which you're doing right now, it's very important. When we give ourselves a moment to think about it, we realize we're running around doing the same thing over and over again and expecting awakening. We're expecting a different result, yet we're showing up and attacking our brother and judging and blaming and condemning and seeing ourselves as individuals. As individual self-sustaining survival units existing independently of the 8 billion other individual self-sustaining survival units and the countless other forms of life that we see as separate, all of them. We see separation everywhere we go. That is the error to correct. And here in this separation, we have this idea called time, and our experience appears to be divided up into myriad measurable component parts. Every fraction of a second leads to a second, which leads to this thing that we refer to as a minute, and 60 of these things that we call minutes we refer to as an hour, and 24 of those we refer to as a day, a year, a decade, millennium, and so on, and so on, in separate measurable units, intervals. And we don't really know what time is, do we? People think of it as an enigma, which makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, what is it anyway? Have you ever asked that? enter this course. Enter these teachings into your experience, whether you're brand new to this or whether you've been doing this for 30 years or more. Time is utterly meaningless. Why is it utterly meaningless? It's a separation device. It's a limitation. And there is, in truth, no separation of any kind. Anything that is quantifiable at all is illusion. Anything that is subject in any way to a breaking down, a parsing into component parts like minutes and seconds, for example, like years, is illusion. There is only perfect oneness. If you're new to this course, you'll hear this so often that it will begin to sink in. That is, should you choose to stick around, which is totally up to you. The beauty of this is our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, does not force us. So no one will force you to accept these ideas. They're not force-fed to us. They're presented for our contemplation. They're presented for our practical application. They're presented for our allowing them rather than blocking them off. Time has absolutely no meaning. It is completely made up, and it is a separation device. We're not separate from our brother in this thing called time. We parse this spinning ball of rock into segments. There are 24 of these segments of more or less 15 degrees longitude called time zones. And of course, world governments have greatly manipulated these, so they're not even straight lines, but you look at it and it looks like a very confusing and weird and completely unreal jigsaw puzzle on a globe. We're not separate from our brother in time zones, even though it appears to be almost 10 o'clock in the morning here in Arizona, in North America. It could be nighttime where you are right now. We're not separate in time nor space. There is no separation of any kind. Time and space are separation devices. And neither one is real. Neither one is real. So let's backtrack a minute to the very start of this section of the text of A Course in Miracles, chapter 11, section 1, which is entitled The Gifts of Fatherhood. Yes, the gifts of our creation. Very cool. So where do we start? Let's start with where we appear to find ourselves running amok, apparently encased in this thing, which we're not encased in because we actually never enter it to begin with. You heard that right. Although not a single one of us, I'm willing to bet, was conditioned to think that. And if you were raised to think that you are not a body, if you were raised with the recognition that there's more to it than just this 80% water sack of guts and bones running around, fantastic. That's rare. The rest of us were not. I assure you. So here where this appears to be our life and our lot, our plight, if you will, right? Where it appears to be our function to get up and go to work every day, to pay the bills, keep the lights turned on. Yeah, that's important. Eat, feed, sleep, drink water, go to the bathroom, check our email, look at our social media feed. I mean, well, all of this appears to be our reality. we appear to find ourselves right here. So what do we do? Great question. If you're wondering, okay, so this is a dream, I can wrap my mind around that and start to accept that, and it is a dream. What do I do? Well, the spiritual path is the setting aside of the ego. That's this false sense of separation, the error, the only error, the only one that needs to be corrected because it's the only error, separation. So it's one thing to contemplate and to begin to let this idea percolate and stew and fester and ferment in your mind that there is no separation of any kind. Perhaps today is the first day you've ever heard it articulated in such a manner. But we all know this, or we wouldn't be on the spiritual path in the first place. Somewhere at some point in time, you have heard the call of our inner teacher to awaken, and you have answered it. So thank you for that. That's huge. It's absolutely huge. That's what has anyone on the spiritual path in the first place. At some point, no matter what form this thought appeared to take, it is a thought that there's got to be something more to it than just this. This can't be the limit of the Son of God. Well, it's not. It's not you. You're unlimited completely. So here, while we think we're limited and we argue all of the time, as unflattering as this is to hear, we argue for our own limitations constantly. Think of the ways that we do this, all of us in our lives. So what we need is what appears to be a gradual path to restore our knowledge of God, to restore our experience of God. Doing that verbal math? Yeah. Restoring our knowledge of God. We are on this thing called the spiritual path so that we may do this. So we're told here something very powerful about the practice of true forgiveness, about which we've said a lot in this series of videos, and we will say quite a bit more. This is the foundational, practical centerpiece of the thought system of A Course in Miracles, true forgiveness of the Son of God. Whatever apparently separate part you forgive, you're restoring your own knowledge. Wherever we restore the holy dwelling place of God's Son, of God, same, one, we restore this knowledge to ourselves. Every act of forgiveness brings us here in this illusion of time that much closer to full awakening. So here, the concept of time, which has no meaning at all, can be given over to our inner teacher. The way our inner teacher sees time is for us to wake up. Every act of forgiveness condenses it. Why? A forgiveness lesson that is learned does not need to be repeated. Quite simply, think of our own experience here in this lifetime. We get the same lessons over and over again until we learn them, until we do something about them. This happens in many ways. We keep seeing the same lessons over and over and over again in our experience until we learn them. And then we don't have to see them again. So this works in all aspects of life. And it certainly works in our spiritual practice. We can't be alone. There is no separation of any kind. You can't be separated from infinity because infinity is eternal. It simply is. It's all encompassing. God is all encompassing with no limits. Therefore, you are all encompassing with no limits because you've been created exactly perfect as you are, as God created you. You've been created perfectly whole, joyous, and limitless, one with your Creator, our Creator. Love simply extends itself, like extends like, God extends what? God. There are no limits at all. You can't be separate from infinity. You can't be separate from your brother, who is you, and you cannot be separate from God. That is impossible. The extension of God cannot be blocked. There are no gaps, there are no holes, there are no potholes, nor bottomless pits or deep wells to be filled. There's no void and no lack. Extension of love, of God, cannot be blocked. There are no limitations of any kind. So here, where we appear to find ourselves in space and time and a spinning ball of rock that we refer to as our home, where we appear to be right here, we find that, well, these ideas can be readily accepted. We can also deny them. And you can. You, in fact, are free to deny your identity, capital I, your reality as the Son of God, as the extension of God, all you want. We can, and we have, or we wouldn't appear to be here. Right? We can. So you can deny this all you want. It doesn't make it any less true. So when people of all traditions assert that spirituality is about allowing, yeah, it is. It's about allowing truth to be just as it is, without any interference on our part, and are simply accepting it, allowing it to be just as it is, and not interfering. The more we do this, the more we set the ego to the side. So delay, waiting, denial is not possible in eternity. There is only perfect oneness after all. But it is possible in time. Waiting is only possible in time, but time has no meaning. It's nothing. This does mean that our delaying our awakening is completely unnecessary. You don't have to wait. And especially, you don't have to wait until this thing completely loses its vitality. You don't have to wait for that. We have, right now, the present moment, to choose God instead of the ego, to choose light instead of dark. Delay is your choice to make, but let me comment that it's completely unnecessary. You don't have to delay. You don't have to delay forgiveness of the Son of God and yourself for dreaming all of this. Your brother is you. You don't have to delay awakening. We're invited to completely leave time behind, leave space behind, leave all of our limitations behind by recognizing and accepting that God doesn't do limitations. God doesn't do limitations. He does not wall us off. He does not kick us out of the garden. He doesn't eject nor exclude. we are the ones that have ejected and excluded ourselves. Perfect love does not cast out, nor condemn, nor judge, nor manipulate all of our comings and goings here in this world. We have the power of choice right here, right now. In truth, there's nothing to choose. There's only perfect oneness. But right here on Spinning Ball of Rock, wherever you find yourself on this whirlwind tour, so to speak, you have a choice, and it's a meaningful choice right now in the present moment to choose the strength of Christ, to choose your identity with a capital I, to choose this thought system, the thought system of the Holy Spirit instead of the ego, to choose truth instead of illusion. Call it whatever you want to call it in words. Let's all recognize that God doesn't blame or condemn. He is not jealous. There's nothing exterior to be jealous of. There is no one out there. There's only perfect oneness. Jealousy is completely meaningless. It means nothing at all. Let it go. Condemnation and blame mean nothing at all. Let them go. Forgive the Son of God. Let all of the drama, the BS, all of our stuff just go. This is the invitation that goes out to all of us 24/7. And we would do very, very well indeed to listen. All right. So, to the extent this raises lots of questions, excellent. Number one, you deserve nothing less than the pure non-dual presentation of this material. You deserve nothing less than full awakening. And you're discovering now what an adult endeavor that truly is, and how you are largely responsible for this, because we're invited and encouraged and urged to take control over our entire experience, take control over your mind, and choose truth. You have help, very powerful help and assistance along the way from your inner teacher. By the way, you're welcome to call the Holy Spirit whatever you want. It is a part of our mind, the part of our mind that goes by many names. Even here in the Course, the Holy Spirit goes by dozens of different names interspersed all throughout the material. One of the most common of these, perhaps the most common, is the voice for God. So the Holy Spirit is seen here as this part of our mind that speaks to us of who we really are and directs us if only we will let it. The Course uses the masculine pronouns he, him to refer to God, the Holy Spirit, etc. You don't have to use those. You'll notice I use the neutral pronoun it quite a bit. The Holy Spirit's not a human being. It's part of our mind. You may call this part of your mind whatever you want. Mike, Elvis, Betty, Louise, even by multiple names. You may call this part of your mind your guides, plural, if you want to. Doesn't matter. Those are all just names. What matters is your relationship with this guide, with your inner teacher, which is what we're all invited to cultivate, because we forgive under our inner teacher's guidance. He'll show us what to do and what to say. And our letting him do it is a very powerful way of setting the ego aside. Should you have questions along the way, that's absolutely perfectly natural. Spiritual inquiry, well, it's inquiry after all. So how could you not inquire? You're more than welcome to ask questions here on this comment thread on YouTube. There have been in the past a number of excellent discussions. So the invitation is open if you have a comment or question here, or even if you just want to drop in and say hello, please do so, because we'd love to hear from you. Now, if you have not yet subscribed, we'd love to have you join us as well. This arrow in the corner of your screen is something you can click or hover over. You'll be prompted to subscribe. Join us and you'll be able to see all of these videos as they come up. So there are several of them per week. Thank you to those of you who have recently joined us. And as always, I thank you for tuning in and for taking the time out to spend this time on your spiritual practice. I often say this, it's coming again. I can't possibly say it enough. The most important offering that you could ever make anyone, anywhere, at any point in time, without a close second, without a distant third, the far singular most important offering that you could ever give anyone, anywhere, is your dedication and commitment to your spiritual practice. So what you're doing right here in just taking 20, 25 minutes out of your day to watch a video on YouTube is of tremendous, far-reaching importance. You can probably imagine how far that goes. Extend that, because it's even more important than you imagine it is. So we all thank you for that. And I will see you all again soon.